Are they still thinking of putting them up on the walls? I think that's a great idea.
I do too. I think
Having my phone
Yeah.
go.
Everybody can see it then. And
see the sun is now at the point that the tilt of the axis of the earth, right? Now to make it this time of year. We just,
oh, yeah,
it's kind of not as sharp.
it's true.
I let the guy know from OI to let us know if he for some reason can't switch the slide over.
Whitney Larry.
Larry, okay. Larry.
Larry is her last name.
Her last name, okay, got it, okay. I see what you're saying. I'm looking on here.
She's
Yeah, okay.
gotten it a few times just on our project.
Have you said 8A, right?
Hmm?
Yeah.
8A?
Yes.
And that's with your microphone.
Oh, no.
Oh, over here. That's the best ones to use if you need to handheld it. Oh.
If you're joining us by web conference, we're going to get started in about 2 or 3 minutes. And just a reminder that the microphones are on and we are live streaming this to YouTube. So be mindful of your microphones, mute, unmute when you need to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Tom Copey, present.
Thanks, Tom. Kurt is on the line. He's muted right now. He needs to, yeah, I can ask. Here, we'll ask. He's on, he's just muted. So he may have stepped away for a second. You got Teresa Barrero. We got Jarrett Sanchez, Chris Caius for board members, and Tom Copey.
No. We've got Yumi Barrero, and that's it.
I know Deb Allen will be here soon because she's supposed to be here for admin, but yeah.
Good. Yes.
You need to text Deb and ask her if she's joining us.
Good morning. This is Dora DeLima. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Dora.
Okay, very good. I
Great.
called in.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And Whitney, are you out there? Do we have audio for you?
Hi, I am. I just joined by phone as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Whitney.
So Sylvia, with the potential cancellation of the biometric testing, they're just going to give everybody who did it before the same.
And we have about a 5% participation. That would be the additional cost that we would incur roughly. So it's kind of
Good, great.
Got Tom Copey.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we need one more.
Yeah, you've got Chris Caius, Jarrett Sanchez.
Why are you saying my name, Roger?
I'm saying that you're present. Nothing more, nothing less. You have a quorum. You got Mark Davist. Mark, congratulations. Thank you for joining us. You win a prize.
Good. Good morning, Roger.
All
Yep.
right,
Teresa Barrero is on.
we have a quorum now.
Yep. And you have a host of guests. We could run down through them, but
Jared, are you with us?
yeah, he was there. He responded once. Oh. Uh-oh.
Okay, it being the hour of 9 o'clock, we do have a quorum. Now let's get the meeting started.
Am I
I not on? Is that better?
Now you are.
Here we go. It being the hour of 9 o'clock having arrived, I'd like to call a Human Services Committee meeting of Wednesday, July 15th to order. You want to call roll and see who's
Leonard,
Here.
Allen. Allen. Barrero,
Guerrero here.
Davist,
Davist here.
Boscheit. Lewis. Okay, you have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. Approval of the June 10th minutes. We have Leonard. We're going to need somebody else to pipe in on these because Bill is the only one in chambers.
Davist second.
Davis second. There we go. All in favor. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Leonard,
Yes.
Barrero,
Guerrero, yes.
Davist,
Davist, yes.
Passes. Anybody here for public comment? Anybody dialed in for public comment? Moving right along, monthly financial reports. Do we have anybody bringing those in? Those are all online and attached. Does anybody have any questions on those? Moving on, is Jake here for Veteran Administration?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Jake.
For the month of May, we're reporting today, we had our disability compensation claims are going 3 days faster than the average Illinois veterans. Our pension claims are going almost a month faster. Of the 8,170 claims pending total in the state of Illinois, 138 of those belong to our office. We filed 10 applications for disability compensation, 1 application for pension, and 1 application for survivor's pension. Also 1 application for healthcare and 4 appeals on VA benefits. 112 forms completed total, with our clients receiving $259,000, almost $260,000 in new benefits for the month of May. No financial assistance expenditures. I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Jake, I think these, to hear that you're staying on pace and that far out in front is wonderful. I know that in one of our businesses, the Medicare payouts for the month of July have been almost non-existent. And we don't have an explanation of what's going on, but they have slowed to a trickle. So to hear that you're still keeping pace is absolutely incredible. Thank you. Any questions for Jake? On the phone? Thank you so much.
Nope, just good morning, Jake.
Good morning.
Okay, Human Resources.
Good morning,
What's up?
everyone. So our Blue Cross Blue Shield monthly statement, as you can see, continues to trend in a positive direction. It's 1,196,691. So we're pleased to continue to see that. For our MERP, as you can see, we have 53 people that are on MERP. And we continue to encourage employees to elect that during our open enrollment. So there's that. Are there any questions on either one of those? Okay. I don't know if Heather's on the phone and she wants to do the financial tracker, or do you want me to do it?
I think in terms of being expeditious this morning, because we have one item that's going to chew up some time.
Yeah.
I think we're doing tremendous. And if I'm not mistaken, we have hit the $1 million mark.
Yep.
And for those on the phone and listening, we've made some dramatic changes in how we handled our healthcare over the past year. And I think that we have just tipped $1 million in savings for 2020 already. And I just think that that's outstanding. So.
Thank you.
Well done to the entire team.
The termination report has 3 terminations. And as you can see for the job applicants, we continue to have so many job applications. We had 194 in June. New hire report, as you can see, there were a total of 20 new hires across the county. So we've been really, really busy with that. Again, we want to thank Lindsay in IT for all her help in creating a really streamlined approach to deploying our required compliance training for prevention of sexual harassment at work. That is required, and it must be completed by January 1st of next year. And currently we have 669 people that have completed that online and remotely. And we have 128 who have also completed the management and elected official because there is a management webinar as well. So are there any questions?
And I will again come clean and say I have not taken that yet.
I
And I
was
continue to
thinking
get my
that motion,
emails.
Well, you have till October 1st.
There we go.
Yep.
And then we're really coming to tap on your door.
Bill?
Yes, one problem I have, I cannot download that at home.
What if you go to the link that has the YouTube? We created a different one for folks.
I'll try that.
Do you want us to resend that to you?
If you wouldn't mind, that'd be great.
Happy to
Thank you
do it,
very much.
because you weren't the only one that had that issue, and Lindsay resolved it by creating it in a different manner, so.
Sure, let's say that's the same problem I was having and that's why it's not done. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Devastated.
Okay. And I believe Dora and Rich Ryan are on the phone to do the next presentation.
Good morning.
Being the Presidio CCMSI
Good
liability
morning.
workers' comp.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, good morning, everyone. The first slide, I just wanted to reiterate, just in case, to give some clarity to the slides that follow, just to remind everyone kind of the county's insurance structure and what your self-insured retentions are. So I can go through these items if you want. In the interest of time, I can just answer any questions if anybody has any, whatever you would like me to do.
Rich, this is Cliff. If on that cyber insurance on the last column,
Yes.
that was the one where we originally started at 250,000 and you have that at $1 million. Am I correct in that?
Yes, and we started looking at higher limits there too. I'm waiting, just waiting for some additional information.
Just outstanding. Thank you for the extra effort on that. I know that's taken a little to consume some time. So
No worries there. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Dora. Okay, good morning, everyone. The slides and reports that you're going to see are as of the last day of June, June 30th, 2020 to be exact. The first bar chart illustrates Kane County workman's comp trend for the last 3 policy periods in descending order as it pertains to total incurred. Your total incurred are the reserves and paid amounts for each period for the claims. As you could see, for the last policy period, which was from December 1st, 2018 to November 30th, 2019, there was a spike, and now we're looking at $1,159,000 in total incurred. Now, I want to point out that there were at least 3 claims that have created the spike, and these are claims that the claims team at CCMSI is working closely with Sylvia and her team to mitigate these open claims. But it is a result of the complexity and the development that is occurring with these couple of cases for that period. These particular claims are being discussed monthly via conference calls. I assure you that we're hoping to see some sort of mitigation and reduction and savings. I did talk to the adjusters after I pulled these reports to get a feel where we're going with it, and I'm hoping that we will see some sort of reduction within the next couple of months. The average cost per claim is trending about $5,281 for the current policy period, which is approximately $6,000 less compared to the last two policy periods. And even with the spike in the total incurred for the last policy period, you're still showing an average cost per claim at $11,771, which is approximately $3,100 less compared to the 2017-18 policy period, which is showing $14,947.
Dora, this is
next
Cliff.
slide.
Hang
Yes.
on, before we leave that, at yesterday's county board meeting, I had made a comment to the board on our shining a flashlight into some of the dark corners on our work comp and that how well we've done. And I specifically applauded your efforts for you and Rich combined in this particular task. And for those board members that are joining us that are reviewing it, I mean, truly the graph will show you the strides that we have taken here. And your efforts do not go unnoticed, and you're so appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
The next bar chart shows the locations where the most incidents occurred from 12/1/2019 to 11/30/2019 as of 6/30/20. And as you could see, King County Sheriff Department Adult Justice Center has 17 claims with total reserves of $91,787. The other locations that follow are the Juvenile Justice Center, Division of Transportation, Health Department, and Judicial Center. Next slide, please.
And I'm sorry, those were frequency or severity on those? What was that, the claim count?
That has to do with the top locations where the incidents are occurring.
But the incidents
as
being
of
dollar
6/30.
value or number of incidents?
It has to do with the I believe if you could go back to that, that is by dollars. So that is by incidents, but also by dollar as well.
Oh, I think there's a column that says claim count 17.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
So it is both. Got it.
It's
Thank
both.
you.
Yes.
Yes.
The next report is the grid that shows and bar chart that shows the departments with the top 5 locations, where the losses were reported and the total incurred for each cause code. So this one is driven by costs. However, cost usually is driven by claim count as well. So as you could see, the top 5 departments that we are showing are Sheriff with 16 claims, Court Services with 4 claims, Division of Transportation with 3, Building Management with 1, and Health with 1. This also illustrates cause codes. So as you could see, we're looking at human contact, struggling and resisting, pushing, pulling, are the 3 causes with the highest amount of total incurred. And as you could see, it is for the Sheriff's Department, sitting at $101,000. Next page, please.
All that human contact is dangerous. They're supposed to be social distancing.
Correct.
That's right.
The next page, the next couple of pages are the executive reports. And this particular report for King County is for the workers' compensation program for the last 4 years and the current year by policy period in chronological order as of 6/30/2020. So the total incurred for the current policy period is sitting at $181,972 for 28 claims reported. The subrogation recoveries amount to $100,680, which is always real good. We always like to collect money on behalf of King County. The average cost per claim for the current policy period is about $6,499, which is approximately $6,100 less compared to the previous policy period. Next slide, please. This is the executive report for Kane County Liability Program for the last 4 years and the current year by policy period as of 6/30/20. Total incurred in reserves and claim count continues to trend downward for the liability program. The average cost per claim for the current policy period is at $3,293. For 12 claims reported, claim count is 32 claims less compared to last period. Paid amounts for the current period has only reached $10,000. Total incurred for this current period is about $42,000, which is $2,500 less compared to the last policy period. Recoveries received from the third parties, and that would be other parties at fault, amount to $398,479. And when I compared this report to last month's report, we collected an additional $15,000 on behalf of King County. I also like to point out, if you look at the amount for the earliest policy periods, you will see that there was about $5.9 million and $8.2 million for the 2015 to 16 period and 2016 to 2017 policy period. So as you could see, King County is trending very, very well these last couple of policy periods for the liability program.
Rich, can I ask a question?
Yes.
In the field of the municipal insurance, are they, when they go back and look at loss history, do they tend to look at a 3-year, 5-year, or more than that?
More than that.
Wrong answer. Thank you.
I know. I know why you're asking that question. Certainly, the trends are going to help us in discussing, but the current liability marketplace, as you're aware, I'm sure, in your business, has tightened from the standpoint of carriers are looking at their rates and what they've charged for adequacy of dollars brought in and things like that versus claims out. But certainly the trends that we're seeing with Kane County are going to help that discussion. Typically, they're taking an 8 to 10 year snapshot. If that answers your question.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please. So this report is relative to the workers' comp claims that we currently have open for Kane County as of 6/30, with the oldest date of injury as of 6/15/2000. And this is by department. And as you could see, there's a total of 60 open claims, 38 of which are for the Sheriff's Department, with the average cost of $117,621. Next in line is Division of Transportation with 6 open claims with the average cost of $652,000. Next slide, please. So as you could see that for the current policy period, this is a chart and grid showing those claims that have been reported for the current policy period, and we have 9 open claims, 7 of which for the Sheriff's Department and 2 for the court services. Total incurred reserves are currently at $171,825 for the 9 claims. Next chart, please. So this pie and grid chart of claims illustrates those settlements that have occurred. And this is from 12/1/2019 to 11/30/2020 as of 6/30. There are a total of 7 claims, 1 for the Division of Transportation and 6 for the Department, Sheriff's Department, for a total amount of $258,304.42, closing out all issues for those claims. And last but not least, this is a report that I developed to do a comparison regarding the program as it pertains to the workers' comp claims and the amounts paid from 2 separate periods, which illustrates the progress of how the county is performing. So as you can see, from 2014 to 2017 policy periods, there were a total of 246 claims that were reported with paid amounts of 1.5 million on the open claims and 3.1 million on the closed claims. Now, from 2017 to 2020 policy periods, which are the most recent periods, we're looking at 195 claims that were reported with paid amounts of $738,000 for the open claims and $469,000 paid on those closed claims. So when you compare 12/1/2014 to 11/30/2017, you have 51 more claims and 3.5 million paid compared to the most recent policy periods of 12/1/17 to 11/30/2020. So,
And Dora, just to be fair though, that the 11/30/2020, we're 6 months short, 5 months short of those numbers rolling in.
We continue to develop this current policy period, but I do want to say that, this is really good progress. Even when I do a comparison and take a look at how they're trending and how the program is trending for the last 6 months, they're still in very good shape. And I have to say that, there seems to be a very aggressive collaborative effort that has been put in place with regard to the telephonic monthly reviews with Sylvia and her team and the department heads and defense counsel and the claims team to confirm the claims are pushing forward. So I think that there is largely an aggressive approach on dealing with some of these complicated cases.
You're part of that effort, so thank you. And
Thank
for the
you.
record, that's a really cool graph.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I mean, just the physical characteristics of that graph, whoever did that, that's pretty cool looking.
Thank you. I'll take the credit for that. I also want to, indicate that too, what we have put in place at the request of Sylvia and her team is, by implementing an additional indemnity adjuster to provide additional focus on some of these cases, I believe has also helped the program in addition to providing training to department heads at King County regarding the CCMSI claims platform so that they are more aware of what's going on within their respective departments and their claims. In addition to reconfiguring the structure of the county's claims with narrowing the actual hierarchy so that there is a better view and clear view on where these claims are happening within the county. So I think with all of these items put in place, it has really helped the program.
All right, does that wrap us up?
I think it does.
You believe it does? I cannot, truthfully, I mean, it sounds like we're beating a dead horse, but honestly, the strides that we're making in the direction that we're going to try and get us back in line with our peer group is just tremendous. And I know that Sylvia heads most of this up and reaching out to the other departments, but we'd be remiss if we didn't say they have embraced this and met us more than halfway, and that cooperation is only going to help all of us. So thank you all. Thank you both very much for attending this morning. Have a wonderful, Deb, I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
The first page of this presentation is a very pretty graph, one that looks like this.
Mhm.
Is,
Show that to Mark so he can beam it up.
I'm sorry?
Show that one to Mark so he knows which.
Oh, sure. Does this show the insurance that we had trouble getting? We went through a number of vendors because of our past history, our recent past history. And I just wondered if that insurance was on that.
That is that insurance.
Okay.
That is the breakdown of the coverage that we most recently were able to procure.
These are our coverages.
Okay. All right.
Does that make sense, Deb? Is that answering your question?
Yeah,
No,
Deb,
it
it's
doesn't.
the yellow areas are the focus that where we had the issues of the excess liability getting up to 25 million. Those yellow columns.
Hang on, we're gonna put there, Deb, there you go. That's on
Yeah.
screen.
That's the one.
So these are our current coverages that we've been able to procure. And quite honestly, since procuring, we've massaged a couple of them. And most notably, I don't know when you had walked in, most notably the cyber liability. When we originally approved that at the board level, that was only 250,000. And we challenged Rich to go back and say, I think that needs to be beefed just a little bit, if at all possible, and if we can obtain it. And he was able to get us to $1 million. So, I mean, yes.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Sure. I just knew that we had, even as recently as yesterday, we discussed how it was difficult for us to get a vendor, even though we were willing to pay the money. And I was just wondering if that was shown here.
Yep.
And it
So
is.
this is what we have, and there was another, and I don't know when you walked in, but there was another graph showing our claims trending, and it showed a 5-year snapshot with
That's the third one in.
year 4 and 5. We're quite high. Where our most current years, 1, 2, 3, going backwards, we're significantly lower. And my question to Rich was,
Yeah.
do they track a 3-year, 5-year? And Rich's response was, unfortunately, they track back to 10 years, but we're trending in the right direction. So the bell curve is going to show a hump in there. But if they look most recently, all of these efforts are driven toward one reason, and that's to make sure that this screen showing our current coverages, we can get that at the most affordable cost to the county. So,
Right. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Great summation, thank you.
Anybody else on there?
Thank you.
Mark? Teresa, anybody? All right, super. Thank you so much
Carol.
again.
Take good care, everyone.
Thank you.
Sylvia, compliance, do we have anything?
No, we don't.
Item 8 is a discussion on our benefits administration system. It's really kind of a status update to bring us where we're at. There's been lots of conversation about this. I appreciate the agility that everybody and all the departments and all the partners involved have continued to show and demonstrate the maturity for everybody to not let egos get in the way, to not let system problems get in the way. We get it. The world is not perfect, and we were trying the very best we can to implement something that will categorically leapfrog us into the 21st century. But as we've explained time and time and time again, this isn't going to be easy. It's like herding cats. It's like, putting the dishes on and spinning them up in the air, and something's going to fall if you don't keep the other one spinning. And everybody has been wonderful, but that doesn't mean that it's not time to actually bring us up to speed and say, are we going to hit our deadline of having the entire benefits administration package online for open enrollment? And to that is Alma. You are Alma. Hello, Alma. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
You are kind of herding the cats on this from the technology side. And I can't imagine the role that you're in, trying to say, hey, payroll, I need this. Hey, human services, I need that. Hey, New World, we haven't seen hide nor hair from you in a while. Can you chime in on this? Hey, Alight, where are we at? Hey, Michael Baker's group at Group Alternatives, chime in and help us. And just because they chime in doesn't mean it's an answer that you can deal with. And the data might not be correct, And we get all that, and everybody has stayed positive, frustrated, but positive. We get that. Bring us up to speed on where we're at, and are we gonna hit that deadline? And, or is there anything else that we can bring to the table? And Roger's here, Sylvia's here in the room. You can, this is a collaborative effort. This is a conversation, and this is our chance to say, are we gonna make it? And if not, is there anything that we can do to help you make this easier for everybody?
Correct. Thank you, Cliff. And I also want to say that Pat Fellner is also pretty much my co-project manager. And I think we want to start with basically having a light kind of walk us through, because there are some concerns with this behind the schedule. We've reviewed it with them, and at this point, we're about 8 weeks into the project, but we are about 5 weeks behind. So we are struggling in that side of it. So just to go into a little bit more detail, Alight has a presentation for us and kind of walk us through that.
Who is our Alight rep?
We have 4 people on the call right now. We have Bowie Hogg, which is the sales rep. We have Whitney Larry. She is the data analyst. Then we have also Caitlin. She is pretty much the project manager or lead on the Alight team. And we have, I believe Jennifer was the other person that might be on the call, and she's also part of the sales team.
Alight, the floor is yours, and we're going to try and cap this in about 25 or 30 minutes if we can.
Hey, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Bowie Hogg from Alight, and I am our public sector group leader on this. And let me just say, that is a perfect introduction to the heavy lift, which is a benefits administration implementation update. It is, this is not an easy task. And from the very start, and I commend the Kane team for taking this catalyst to get to this level, and literally, as you said, bring it up to the 21st century of what we're tackling, and in the long run, make your entire team from HR, IT, more automated, more efficient, and really make it a better employee experience for your employees in the long run. So I really appreciate the lift. We always say during any implementation, there's always bumps in the road. There's always hurdles we have to get over. And so we believe in full transparency and having the discussions. But let me just thank all of the Kane County team for work and communication. This is not easy, but we do commend you for taking this step. And now it's getting through this and getting to the final stages. So as you heard, I've got other members on the team. I'll be doing most of the talking. We've got Caitlin Johnson, our implementation manager, Whitney Larry, who is our data analyst. Jessica is actually the sales exec, and then I am our public sector leader. So let me talk through it, and just to kind of sum up what we're going to be tackling today. I want to give some overview. We're going to go through some status update as to where we are, what some risks are of going live on October 2020, which is our goal on this. Some decision points for your group to think about and start thinking of how do we get to that final goal and then the run. Some dates we'll look at on there to give everyone some full transparency, and then some final recommendations of what we would say from our best practice from where we see. So as you look at this is a slide, and this has had a little even change from yesterday, and I'll say this, but if we look at what we did from a scheduled task from where we are, we should be at about 53 total tasks to be completed. About 42 should be completed, and we're running about 16. So we're running about behind. As you can see on here, as Alma so eloquently said, week 8 is our current project timeline of where we should be, and we're trending about week 3. I would say just from some emails yesterday and today, by the end of this week, we think we'll be at about week 4. So approximately 5, maybe 4 weeks behind in the total project from where we're running with this project. So what are we doing on the implementation? When we schedule this project, normally we scheduled 20 weeks for this implementation. It's a big lift for y'all's organization, going from manual to automated. Normally we schedule about 15 weeks, and we added an extra 5 weeks because we knew what was happening. Now, the one thing I'll say is no one fully knew the level of we'd still be in this pandemic that we're facing, which I think everyone it faces as a challenge. But we do think we still have time. We still have time to get to the finish line from where we're coming. This is a major change. This is going from a manual. Your team in HR and IT has done a great job of managing this from a manual standpoint, and it's a lot of work. They spend a lot of time looking through documents, picking things apart, trying to make sure there's no, it does add that element of human error, and human error does occur. And so that's why the team wanted to go to a more automated data system and process to image what most other large public sector and then also all corporations across the country are really pushing and doing from an automated benefits administration update. We do have, as we're getting into this, just one little note, we've got full training. The teams have agreed on what the training is. We're doing some constant training and then training the entire team of what this benefits administration, how to manage it, how to go through that process once we are going live on that. And then just a note, when your employees start to enroll, because you'll hear me talk about a little bit about the employees enrolling in this, we do have full, it's called SmartBen Assist, which is all employees to be able to help employees navigate their enrollment, talk through their enrollment, answer any questions to them that they may have, which takes that lift off of your HR team of people coming in and asking a question and allows them to call in and have someone really help them understand what they're doing in this enrollment and how to go through this enrollment. With that, we do have some concern over the go live in October 2020. And that's, would you go back to that slide? I want to hit a couple of our points on there. And so go live, what we have. One of the big pieces is HR discovery.
Excuse me, Bowie?
Yeah, sure.
When you talk about that, do me a favor and say, when you say go forward or backwards, tell us what page on your presentation so we catch up at this end.
Oh, sure. Perfect. Slide 5, which is what I'm seeing on my screen from the share. It's the implementation status update. And so what we have here is one of the big documents that we're working on. I know I've seen some emails yesterday and today that we think this will be fully completed. And it's caused some of the delay is this is a big ask. HR's had to do a huge ask of ironing out some policies, ironing things out, and getting to the final stage on this. And the team got it completed, but then there's constant updates on that. And what that causes, and I always like to get to the outcomes from where that comes, is we've got to have this completed for our team to then be able to take that and build the entire outlay of the system on there. And so that's where we're hitting some delay. I know they're working, and our team, I think we'll have it all completed by the end of this week, which is a huge lift and huge ask from that standpoint. We also, another obstacle we face, and someone, as you said it so eloquently, Mr. Chairman, listen, we have to get a lot of data from New World. New World is a critical partner in this relationship to make sure we're getting this information. We've got to have, and maybe more senior level commitment from Kane to New World of, hey, we need as much help as possible to be able to get this data on time and with efficiency for over to us to be able to hit some of these. It's just one thing, and we'll talk a little more about that. And then there's a lot, let's be very transparent. There's a lot of decisions that HR, payroll, IT, all the teams have to make together, which is part of this heavy ask from where we're coming. And that's including some of the things of making some decisions on ACA management and reporting, retiree management requirements, things that have to be written out and really situated from this standpoint. And in the scheme of things, this is good because then once you're done with all this, and as you get through a bumpy road, you've got everything really laid out in a really consistent manner of how you're managing all the benefits constantly for the entire Kane County. There are, and I commend the our outside HR consultants for Kane County are assisting and working with our team to provide any assistance, and also on some policy decisions and procedure decisions of how they're going through that process. Let me go to the next slide, and I'll hit a couple of, yeah, sure, sorry.
It was my understanding that, and if I'm inaccurate on this, I apologize, and I don't mean to step on anybody's toes, but is that New World, we were having some problems maybe contacting them or getting a representative online. Has that been resolved?
I think it's on the cusp of being resolved. They are, Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Alma. I can answer for that for you, Cliff. Basically, yes, we made contact with our sales rep that we work with. And where the issue was coming in was actually getting a resource from their custom team. So somebody that can actually write the file. Other resources were tied up. Normally what we do whenever a project is coming up, I'm the system administrator for New World. So I will contact them and let them know, by the way, this project is coming up. We're going to need a resource for this timeframe. This project, for however it happened, it just was very quickly. So when we reached out, their resources were tied up. So it took us a while to get a hold of the custom
Confident,
team.
resolved, you don't need us stepping in.
No, I think
Perfect. Move right on, Alma.
I think we're good. We're
Yeah.
good. So we have gotten contact with New World, and we have the questions that they require. So I think we're good.
Thank you.
I agree with that, Cliff, and I'll always say, almost talking this, if you happen to talk to anyone in New World, encourage them to keep working and working with us. We'll always take that extra help. If you go to the next slide, slide 6, the project risk. And so what you'll see here, we've got two things to build. We want to talk about the system implementation and then the data implementation from that standpoint. One thing that we would sit there and say, what's the risk? And let me just go directly to that yellow section. It's loading 2020 benefit plans onto the SmartBen system. Let me explain that real fast. So what it is you have your manual system that you're processing right now, and then you've got the new system coming in place, which will go live October 2020. It'll have the employees enroll on there, and then all of a sudden 1/1/21 is when all the benefits are processed through there. Loading the 2020 benefits, what that is loading all your current benefits from this current year, from what you have, into the system so that the employees have all that directly when they're going in to enroll. In theory, it's a great concept. It works really nice. It's nice for the employees. It is a huge, heavy lift on the entire Kane County team. It is loading a lot of information. It's getting a lot of data built into that system, a lot of benefit files, layouts, going from manual to load that in. And so we'll make a recommendation on that, but this is a key factor from loading 2020 benefits. And we'll get into how you can manage that without loading those systems, and just an extra step from your employees to be able to see.
And
Now, as far
Bowie,
as data,
if somebody could
yeah,
help
sure.
me understand this just briefly, on this particular data load, and again, I'm going to speak in generalities, and I'm more Fred Flintstone than I am Lamborghini here. So my understanding is this was the data file that originally said this was going to come with a $30,000 cost factor to it, and that we were trying to do this in-house, and that I believe Mike Baker's team has said they might be able to massage that data and get that in without that expense and
Correct.
without a delay. Is that the data set we're talking, and has that been
That's the
completed?
benefit file layout.
It is a file layout.
Okay. And we're good with that now, or not?
I think we're close to making that, and I think that's a decision, and I would say it's a discussion point of where we need to go, and loading that versus not loading it. And I'll get into little recommendations of how to not load that and how the team can work through that. And it eliminates that cost. It also eliminates, I think, a lot of time from getting that loaded and gets us to the final stage.
Excuse me, can I talk?
So,
Michael from Group Alternatives. What we had done from HR when we realized we needed this information is we reached out to all the vendors and asked them to give us all the benefit files, which was like 10 vendors. And we were able to get all that information and send it over to Mike. And then Mike looked at it and said, oh, Sylvia, there's got to be a way we can get this information from New World. Let me talk to Roger. I believe that that's where they're at, and they're able to pull that information from New World. But that was my last understanding from Mike. But he sounded very confident in that, so I don't know.
So the New World, this is Roger from IT. The New World information. It is certainly in there because we do payroll deductions for all the benefits that you select. So there was a, I believe it's like a definitions file or like a report that was.
I was just going to say, to add to that, I believe Patsy ran a report from New World and provided that just recently to Sylvia, correct, Patsy?
Yes, that was already generated, and I think that's the file that you guys asked for.
Yes, but.
All the
it-
current elections should be on
Right,
that file.
but I think, and I'll send, I don't know if Michael thinks that's the right file, but
The last piece of that is to take what's in that and translate it to the format that SmartBen and them are looking for. So
yeah,
it's a report out of New World. It's in New Worldese. Now we need to translate or convert whatever that is into what Alight is expecting.
Okay.
And we haven't.
And I
we
know
haven't
I
gotten
just
to
went
that
way
part
in the
yet.
weeds on an
No,
executive
that's okay.
summary, but
No,
I
no.
apologize because I think that would, and for the record, Patsy, it's good to meet you.
Hi, everybody.
and I don't know if that's, going to be the right format.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know the format, there's still some from the format that comes from New World. There's got to be some customization on that. And Cliff, I think you just said, we're going into the weeds, and it's easy to go into the weeds to this really quick.
I
we're,
get it.
we're trying
I
not
mean-
to not trying not to get into that weeds too quick on all.
Real quickly, there's 3 different things that are being discussed, Chair. One is a extraction from New World to create a file for Alight, right? Another is take the carriers data from the carriers and have either Group Alternatives or Alight bring that into the system. And the other is have Alight just go straight to the carriers, get that, and that's the
$30,000 question.
Yeah.
so those are your 3 options. And then there's a 4th rendition of this, which is going through open enrollment and having everybody type in what their selections are, and having the employees basically do data entry as they select their benefits.
And we stand committed to helping you guys in whatever. I am not going to sit at the front here and even pretend again, Fred Flintstone,
I believe
Lamborghini, there's a chasm there that I
My
can't jump.
intention was to make that a soft handoff to Bowie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great handoff, and it talks about that second yellow, and that's the point as team talks through of loading the current benefits and the cost that comes with that, and the work that comes with that, and then also a full active enrollment of asking each employee to go through and actively enroll in the benefits for this coming year, which you have active versus passive. If you go to the next slide, slide 7, we'll talk a little more about the benefits information load. We talked about a lot of this. You heard us just talking about this as current benefit load, decision points of what we're happening. What happens with that carrier benefits load. I'm trying not to go into the weeds too much on this, but you'll see, there's a carrier blackout period during that. The HR, your team at Kane does have to carry 2 systems. So anytime there's a change in your manual system, you then need to go in and manually enter it into our benefits administration system. If there's a change in November of 2020 or October of 2020, you load it so that it's loaded and corrected for the 2021 year, because employees are seeing our current system of the 2020 manual versus now they're coming into this new automated system. Just some of the obstacles of that benefit load decision points, and that's all to help the employees and see that from not having to do a full active enrollment. If you go to the next slide. So what are the key dates? What are your options of how that is? And you'll see, I won't go too much in the dates just to give you an idea of looking at them, but option 1, you've got your active enrollment, which is asking all employees to go in, enter their information this October, and load their information and enter in. I think data entry is the point, but choose their elections. Choose their elections of what their benefits are, with no benefit or dependents loaded into the system. So they're not going to have the historical data in there for their system. Option 2 is load it, active enrollment with benefits loaded, but not loading the dependents, which is probably even farther extreme. And then the last one is loading it active enrollment with all benefits, with benefits and dependents loaded into the system. So you'll see some dates, and you see, listen, option one, it takes away a couple of big, those are just a couple of dates, but that's a heavy lift right there. A testable employee benefit file, loadable employee benefit file. Those are a lot of information that's going through on that process to get to there. You'll see at the very bottom, I have also passive enrollment. These are still going to have the same dates loaded on those type of things. Passive enrollment just means whatever the employees had last year, they would continue to have this next year, and they wouldn't have to go in and enter their information in the system for that full enrollment.
And Bowie, we
stop. I think I
totally
heard a
understand that
question.
with Sylvia
Okay,
from
good.
HR and Mary Ann in the room and payroll in the room. You know what? This is a project that we're looking for. Keep the eyes on the horizon. This is going to be a speed bump like we have never seen before as we change our culture. But if you look to 2021, you will look back and say, wow, am I glad we did this? Not that it's not going to be painful while we're going through it. So, sorry, keep going, Bo.
You're exactly right, and that's where it comes. Once, we always say it's like building a building. Once you build a building, it's a pain while construction is going on, but once the construction is complete, you love that new building from where you're going. So, and I appreciate all the work from the team. If you go to the next slide, we'll hit some of our recommendations of what we would say, and this is from a thought process to get to having that October 2020 go live with what we think is the best practice, easiest way to get to that from that standpoint. We would recommend not loading the current benefits. It saves Kane County some money on that cost. It saves a lot of time. It also keeps it from two systems being utilized during the year when they're loaded. So now they make changes. No, you've got your 2020, all your data on that, and then it's everything for the 2021 going forward as two systems. We would also recommend a forced open enrollment. So an active enrollment, ask all employees to go through. This is not uncommon. You're going to hear some employees complain. Like, you're going to have some that don't want to sign up. They don't do that. I mean, it's just human nature from that. There's always going to be those ones that say that. But it is, we think, the best way from a data standpoint to help all that and process through. You see the last, we've got some of those, leadership of New World. We've got to rely on New World. So anything we can do to help escalate New World and make sure we're following up, and I know we've gotten some traction, we'd ask that. Those are recommendations. I would also say other recommendations, things you can also do, and there's challenges with each one of these. You could, to give yourself more time, you can always defer open enrollment and switch it from October to November, December. Now, listen, I know the county's managing elections. There's a lot heavy lift going on. Who knows if we're out of this pandemic in that time frame? Hopefully, if so, but there's a lot going on. As you can talk about, there's acquiring additional resources to assist Kane with the workload on this data file if you're trying to do those. And then the last one that you could always do is you could continue with your current system, delay, and then resume the project to start again in 2021. So you continue to go through your enrollment manual, everyone gets loaded, and then in 2021, the project picks back up and we get it loaded, and you do what we call a mid-year implementation and bring it in mid-year without the annual enrollment being the catalyst for that thing. Those are our recommendations. There's the overview. We tried not to go into the weeds, but hopefully we gave a good insight as to where we are and how we get to the finish line, which is the goal of our organization and with Kane County, as we all want to get this completed and moving Kane County into the future.
Perfect. Alma, are there other people that are going to speak on this today, or is this the extent of the
No, that would be it.
Okay, so I will go around the room and ask the different departments if they have any concerns. Bowie, I mean, when we're looking at, you caught me off guard there with the notion that there are employees that may not want to be participatory in this because it represents change. I'm envisioning a couple of kiosks that are out in an open area, maybe the conference room downstairs, where we have staff able to help them, and they're coming in and doing what needs to be done. I don't think this is a question of participation. this is a statement of, this is the way we are doing it going forward. Um, If I'm mistaken on that, I hope somebody that would jump in on that.
Mr.
And
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, let me add also that SmartBen Assist, we will have, anytime an employee needs to call and someone to help them call in and go through. The team was very smart. Y'all's team was very smart in making sure they added that to be able to help the employees. And so it is part of the entire contract that we're providing at no extra cost to help the team, help all employees
Okay.
be able to.
We can do it remotely.
And Sylvia and Marianne, I know it's really easy for me to say that because it falls on your shoulders. And then it goes downhill over to you guys. I get all that. I'm not naive to that, but it's a 1-year process. Yeah, and I'm sorry, your name again?
Pat.
Pat, was that your comment? Was that your
Yes,
concern?
we had purchased the option from Alight that any of the employees would be able to call a number and get assistance and actually register everything over the phone if they like.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, and for those commissioners that are online with us, I would be remiss if I don't take at least a second to say, if it wasn't your support in funding the project and making this happen, we wouldn't be here. And we are, I hate this line, but we are truly trying to be good stewards of that money and put it to practical use. And I so appreciate everybody's time in bringing us up to speed and the commitment to having the entire project available by deadline. So with that, let's kind of go around let's start with Sylvia, and we'll just kind of go back around the room. Patsy, Alma.
Bowie, are you still on the call?
Yeah, I'm still on the call.
Hi, everyone. It's Sylvia. I just want you to know that we have a resolution that we will be going on to next that we put together for canceling the 2020 annual employee wellness biometric screening. And in that resolution that we created with our council is that open enrollment will be from October 1st to the 30th, and employees will be able to elect or change benefits remotely from the Alight Benefit Administration System. We are doing this, of course, due to the public health emergency associated with the global COVID-19 pandemic. So in your option 1, 2, or 3, in talking with group alternatives, again, Michael felt rather confident that the benefit file could occur from New World, and we could go with option 2 and load the benefit file. And I'm just sharing that information. If we had to go with option 1, where it was a full enrollment and the employees had to do it, that again would be fine. But we do urge us to stay to the October 1st to the 30th open enrollment for our employees.
And Sylvia, I think you're right on. And if we can get it loaded, of course, yeah, let's get there. And I think that's a good insight on that. So, but I think it's also, I appreciate hearing your voice, the contingency planning of, okay, what if it isn't on there? So just, I appreciate that.
Thank you. And that's all I have. And thank you to the team from IT. I have to give a very special thank you to Marianne and Susan, because if you could see the discovery sheet, and Bowie, I'm sure you can confirm this, it is some serious gathering of information in an environment that has so many variances to union plans, non-union plans, retirees, moving into Humana at the same time for the Medicare. So I just really have to give a great big shout out to Marianne and
Cannot
Susan.
imagine what you're juggling. And we've said that all the way along.
And
Marianne,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Marianne.
Patsy.
Hi. Bowie, I just have one question. How do you feel our chances are as a successful go live if we stay with a 10/1 open enrollment date?
And I asked that question to Caitlin, our implementation team, daily. I'm like, okay, when is the dead point of, point of no return of getting that? Listen, we wouldn't be saying we think we can make it still if we didn't think we could make it. And do I have a percentage of what that chance is? No, I think with knowing the obstacles we're facing and getting these final pieces in place, it gets us to there. So I still think we can achieve it. To say that, because it's putting a lot on the line, and we want to make sure we know Kane has a lot riding on it, and we have a lot riding on it also. So I do think we can get there for that October 2020. It may be different. It's whether it's with the current benefits or without the current benefits loaded. I think that's a big decision point on there.
And Patsy, I will make available my personal cell phone number. If I can help at any point in time, this isn't a 9 to 5 project. If you need me at 8 o'clock at night, or you need me on a Saturday afternoon, if there is any way that I can help connect the dots, please reach out. This is, for us, hitting the deadline is critical. It'll all look easy next year. You know what I mean? Make hay when the sun is shining, and the sun is shining right now. Alma?
You know what, I was just going to follow up to Patsy's question, since you asked the question, Patsy. Bowie, I know you're saying that you're still confident that we could still do or meet the October 2020 go live. However, my question is, at the rate that we have been going, and if we continue at this rate, would we still be confident of meeting the October 2020 date?
If we continue to stay as behind or get farther behind, no. I think these next 2 weeks are critical weeks to get the data loaded. If we're going to load the data, make sure it's in there and get our system built out. That's our point. It's file layouts, and listen, we wish we could say file layouts are an easy system. Anyone who's ever dealt with file layouts knows it can be a nightmare, because if the data is not loading correctly, you have all kinds of other issues following that side. So I do think, you know, as Caitlin and Whitney will say, and if they want to add in anything on audit completion from where we go, we do think we can get there. The files can make it tough. If we don't get everything a lot completed by the end of this week and then the next week, I think we have to start looking at what are alternative options.
We hear you loud and clear. We've got about 5 minutes here. Alma, do we have group alternatives on the line with us?
I'm not sure.
Heather?
Did they dial in?
Yes, this is.
Hey, Heather,
Heather,
do you guys have a firm grip on this file that we're talking about? My understanding in conversations with Mike Baker was that you felt strongly that you can get this into a format that was going to be usable. Am I hearing that that's not the case right now?
Right. So when I was talking to Michael Weiskirk yesterday, kind of on the technology details on here, my understanding as of right now is still, they were talking about the 8 files that would have to be stitched together, that would take a lot of time. But he had been talking to Roger and I believe Michael Davis to determine if Tyler and New World would be able to pull that. But as Roger, was speaking earlier,
is there a deadline on that they have committed to?
So Heather, have you guys seen the New World file that Patsy generated from New World?
I have not seen the New World file, no.
Okay.
Patsy,
I don't know about Mike.
all of us and IT as well,
I'm sure, I believe that's the same file, I think.
that you gave to Alma and I. Okay.
Yes.
Roger, you had a question?
Can you forward it on to everyone, Alma? Thank you.
Roger.
Just real quickly, Bowie, there's 3 things that I see on slide 8, which are key dates. There's a demographic file, which I don't believe we're having any issues with. Are there any issues with the demographic file by 8.3?
I'll
What
be
I'm getting
honest.
at is in any project, there's what's called a critical path. So if you hit a point where you can't make the time for that, and that's when you have a decision to make about your critical path. So is the demographic file going to be available for testing by 8.3? That's the question.
I'll be honest, Roger, that was one of the points that I was going to hit during this meeting. Right now, Allied would like that file by August 3rd. The only way that we would be able to get that file completed is if we have the discovery document completed. At this point, we have not gotten the finalization and the blessing from HR for that file. And so I'm not confident, but.
Pardon me, but I have an update. Caitlin, are you on the phone?
I don't see a Caitlin.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi. So the audit file went back to you, and the discovery file. And I emailed you yesterday that I believe if we get that back by today from you, that we can go through it all, Mary Ann and I, and get that back to you by Friday and sign off.
So that's number one. And then the second one is.
Roger, sorry. Who is Caitlin?
Caitlin is with Alight. She is the project manager
Thank you.
that we work with, and she's fantastic.
Hi, Caitlin. Thanks.
So the second one is the employee benefit file, which involves the different carriers giving us the information. That one it has on your chart, buoy 9/4, so September 4th. So that's really at the point where you're talking about whether or not you have historically the data of everybody versus you're having everybody do active enrollment and entering everything.
Sure.
So I think that September 4th date is what is absolutely critical at this point, because the follow-on to that is the dependent file, which is also going to be coming from either New World or the
Right.
data we have. So between now and September 4th, if you don't have that, then you are forced to make different decisions about your critical path. You can't
And-
hit October for that. So those are the things that you have to watch for. And it's not a choice, really. It's you have to work towards that end. And if you're not able to get that by that time, then a light in this chart is effectively saying you can't do it by the date you've asked. So you can't do C without doing A and B first.
Fully understood.
That's all this is
One of
about.
these is dependent to build upon the next, and if you fail
Correct.
at one,
Yeah.
you don't move to the next one.
So
I
Roger,
think we
can
get
I
that,
ask a
and
question?
hence the point of a executive summary
Yep.
discussion in a committee meeting to make sure that this
Yeah.
project, which is.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is option 1, 2, and 3, we're going to try and load all this. That's what my direction is. We're going to try and get the demographic file by 8/3. We'll try to get the benefit file by 9/4 and the dependent file. As those go into place, you would get the resultant effect of having the historical data and enrollment period in October. Short of having that happen is the direction to have a light try to build the files for us versus having group alternatives and IT and HR and payroll doing it.
In regards to the benefit?
Benefit and dependent files.
Okay.
So I think we can, at some point, the problem I see is if you're asking a light to do the work, you can't come to them on September 3rd and say, we'd like you guys to
Right.
do build
Absolutely.
the file for us. They just won't have enough time either.
So all I can say from our ownership perspective is that we can, once we get the files back from Caitlin, and part of the challenge was, and Caitlin, please chime in if you wish, was that our retiree component in the way that's handled, in the way you need to create every variable, because the system needs to understand if this, then that, then this, then that, then. So Caitlin, every time we went through discovery and thought, was so thoughtful and would come back and say, oh, I think we need to add another layer because when they go in there. I think we're there now, right, Caitlin?
I believe so.
I think, and hey, this is Bowie, and let me just say, the other part we always, and Roger, you said it right, with these data files and dates on these, we also have to take into account all the work that Sylvia and team's doing also on how it's communicated out to employees. So while those are dates, there's also the other parts of the team communicating out HR enrollments on those things also. So there's a lot.
So Caitlin, I think we can wrap it up by Friday. Do you agree?
It depends on how long it takes your team to go through the audit. We typically lend a week because it will be about 80 to 100 tabs of review. So it does depend on your team and your
Right. So if you can get that over to us, if you're done with it, we'll get started on it.
I still have to, because of discoveries from yesterday, I have to finish building today, and then it takes several hours to pull and create that audit. And so I will provide that as soon as I can.
And does that seem like maybe by Friday at the latest?
Yes.
Thank you.
To get that, and then are we adding a week onto that, Caitlin, to go through the audit?
So we typically, I give a deadline of a week. If they are able to go through it quicker than that, then great. But, we usually, we'll say a week from the date that they receive it.
I've committed myself, Mary Ann, and Susan to go through that as soon as we get it back. So it'll probably take us about 2 days. So if you get it back to us on Friday, we will get it back to you no later than next Wednesday for certain, so that we don't hold up the component of the demographic file.
Perfect. I appreciate everybody's commitment in going over and aboard on this. It's appreciated. Just know you have our gratitude. So,
All right.
Okay, Roger, anything else on this? Alma, Patsy, Sil? Mary Ann, is there anything at all that you would like to chime in on? We don't mean to say, hey, we're going to do all this. Here's the wheelbarrow, Mary Ann, carry it up the hill. I mean, if there's anything at all, please, you're part of the team. Okay.
Good.
Dynamite. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we are out of old business, leading to new business, and there is a quick discussion on biometric screening. Bill?
I'd like to move that
Okay.
for discussion.
All right. Do we need a second to move the discussion? Mark Davis, seconds?
Davis, second.
Beautiful. So the long story short of this is we do our biometric screenings that really help us focus on our employees and our staffing. But we have this thing called a pandemic going around, and trying to get everybody into a room and making this happen is probably something that we might want to consider a second. And so my question to Sylvia became, can we discuss some of the financials on this and how we might overcome this?
Okay, so again, the reason, of course, is that we want to make sure that we're minimizing any potential to our employees of exposure to COVID. And if you were in the meeting yesterday and you heard Barb Jeffers talk, certainly we want to be aware of any unforeseen resurgence. And I believe after speaking to our legal counsel and reaching out to the various directors, that we feel that this would be the best approach, and we highly urge the board to consider it. And if we were to offer the incentive that we give to our employees that participate in the biometric screening, which by the way is about 95% participation, the additional cost to give it to all those that are on the health benefit plan, and remember it's for the employee and for their eligible spouse, would be about an additional $75,000. And that is actually what we pay for the biometric screening anyway. So it basically comes out flat.
So the question, I mean, there's two sides, I guess, to this coin. And the first one is, are we doing a disservice to our employees by not doing the screening? And the second side of that coin is the finances of saying, how does this impact us or not impact us?
Well, and pardon me for interrupting. I have to add another variable to that. My conscience couldn't possibly be comfortable in a COVID environment if we decided that we were going to do this biometric screening. And again, it's not an outcome-based wellness incentive. It is simply participating in the biometric screening. So if we brought all these people in, and just for hypothetical discussion, let's say we had 5 people that became COVID positive or 19, and one of them was detrimental. And all we had to do was make a decision to observe what we have in front of us. We have a situation where we want to keep everyone safe and minimize any kind of potential. I think that's very, very important to keep in light here.
I understand. And if, it's hard to get me from chiming in personally on some items. I am not in favor of this. I am in favor of continuing at the biometric screening. However, with that, I will refer to Barb Jeffers and what Barb feels is appropriate and correct at this particular time. And I just want to voice that. The goal
And she
of the-
supports this approach.
the goal of the committee is to move this to the larger body for consideration. So given that it is here, but I will by all means defer to what, Barb feels is appropriate and follow her guidance on that. So with that said, with it being motioned and seconded, is this all in favor? Say aye.
We have to do a roll call.
It's roll call.
Yeah.
I defer to Gabby.
Mr. Chairman?
I'll
Yes.
roll call all the time.
Okay. Just a question.
Yes.
If our employees participate so well anyway, isn't there the opportunity to simply have our primary physician?
Yes, it is in the resolution that if they want to opt into getting the biometric screening, again, we're not going to require the results, but we put it in the resolution that they are absolutely able to go and get that through their physician, and it would be covered under their group health plan as a claim.
Would that
Does
make,
that answer your question?
well, yeah, would that make you feel any better, Mr. Chairman, if we just asked our employees to do that, or,
If they'd like to voluntarily do it, that,
well,
I mean, it's not,
we would ask them to strongly volunteer to do it?
I don't want to be perceived in any way, shape, or form of coercing anybody to do anything. If this is what Barb Jeffers thinks is appropriate, then I will not fight her on that.
Okay.
But, and again, I'm just giving my opinion.
And
I
our
would like to
counsel as well.
and move this to the next level.
And Rich Ryan as well, by the way, for our liability.
Okay.
I reached out to him as well.
Which is, Rich's counsel impacts my decision on several votes that come not only from this committee, but at executive and at the board, including my votes yesterday, which I was extremely not willing to vote. And based on Rich's counsel, I voted against my conscience. So
Thank you for tugging and reminding me that
Yes.
I reached out to him
So-
as well.
with that said, Gabby?
Allen?
Aye.
Guerrero?
Guerrero, yes.
Davis?
Davis, yes.
O'Shea? Oh, he's absent, I'm sorry. Lewis is absent. Leonard?
Yes.
And Surges?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, motion carries. Motion for reports to be placed on file. Bill, second Deb. Any conversation on that? Is this line item or all in favor?
Roll call.
Yeah, roll call.
Roll call it is, Gabby.
Allen?
Aye.
Guerrero?
Guerrero, yes.
Davis?
Davis, yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Yes. And just for the record, my little red page here
Very helpful.
says all those in favor,
I know,
not
it
roll
was-
call, so
It's
don't
been
you?
changed, I'm sorry.
Okay, I see no need for executive session, do we? Motion for adjournment? Bill, Deb, all in favor?
Oh, sure. Leave me out.
There you go. Guys, thank you for taking time to dial in and participate. It's greatly appreciated. And for those people who the committee has not met before, it is a pleasure, and thank you for your time, and more importantly, for your attention and agility in helping get this done. It's appreciated. Thank you so much. We're adjourned.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Mark.
All right. For those of you that are staying on the web conference for admin committee, we're not going to disconnect. We're just going to keep on the same call. So you're welcome to stay on this call. We'll get started in a couple minutes as we switch board members.
Like we're just interchangeable, Roger.
Just along for the ride.
Oh, no, you're driving, buddy.
I'd like some weight music if we could get something, a little peppy.
Ooh, nice. The multi-use facility,
Promised.
tip up wall pieces. I gotta get my hard hat and my boots on, go out there and have a look.
Hold that off before they're gonna miss those
That'd be
days.
fantastic.
Muting myself now, Roger.
Stay safe out there.
Yeah. All right. So, hey,
Good German.
Yeah, right?
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, it's going up fast.
You know, I mean, I can only attribute it to a big crew, but you know, they're not that tall.
Right.
Compared to some.
Yeah, it's looking, oops, sorry.
I got
correct. I brought a slide. Yeah.
Well, we've got Davis and Nancy both so they can report out of New World.
I spent it like 3 days.
And Michael.
It starts on a Monday.
He told us. He's like,
Yeah.
well, that format's not been approved yet. I'm like, oh, okay, so we're not gonna convert yet. So we're waiting for that and then we'll start. So then we'll see, we'll really know what we have.
We decided to do all of the. Somewhat of a calculated amount.
So if you're still on the web conference, we're getting situated. We're gonna get started in about 2 minutes.
Taking off the training wheels?
And off board members.
I think you saw her hand it to me.
It's probably the change. It's probably the change.
Thanks, Deb. I'll make that happen for you.
Thank you.
Oh, that was loud. Oh, my God.
Excuse me.
I know.
Excuse me.
I know.
Every time Sylvia hit that thing, I was like,
I know.
Yeah.
No need to lean.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to usurp on your space. Good. really sensitive. And this is really sensitive. Go away. Good morning, everyone. This is Kane County's Administration Committee meeting on July 15th, 2020 at 10:27. I'm Deborah Allen, Chairman. I'd like to
I can
welcome-
barely hear you, Deb.
Yeah, you gotta get up on that microphone like you're on The Voice or something.
Okay, I was trying to be careful because sometimes they're really rowdy. Is that better? Is that
Keep
better?
talking.
Not much.
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear.
Mark.
Okay. All right. Well, continue to speak up as necessary. I believe we need to take roll call first. Our, okay, sure. That's fine. That's fine. Thank you. Sure.
Copy?
Our recording secretary is Gabriella Figliosi. Thank you so much.
I can't hear you guys. Sorry, this is Tom, but I'm present.
Copy's present. Davis?
Davis here.
Roz? Caius?
Caius present.
Leonard?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Present. Real good. If everyone has had a chance to review the minutes, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of last month? Mr.
Caius moves.
Froz, Mr. Froz moves, Mr. Caius seconds. Any changes or corrections?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
I believe paragraph 11, dealing with the Fabian property, is incomplete in the sense that my clear recollection of the meeting is that we had a consensus of the committee members that we instructed staff to obtain proposed quotes from commercial real estate firms that we could evaluate as a committee and with the goal toward moving this matter forward to the full board for consideration. That's not present in there, and I have language to that effect if there's a consensus that was done. But my clear recollection is that we, in fact, instructed the staff to move ahead, and I don't believe we have the report today, and I would like to have it at next month's meeting.
We can certainly include that, and I have an update. I thought I would bring it up when we get to the Fabian conversation, but noted for the minutes. Okay. Do we need to review that change, or can we go ahead and approve the minutes with your agreeing that you'll slip something in?
Excuse me, this is Tom. I can't hear anything. I mean, I can barely hear it. Let me put it down.
Okay. Mr. Martin is asking for a change in the minutes, and I was asking for the protocol for changing minutes, if we have to wait to see the changes in order to approve the minutes, or if we can trust Gabriella to make that correction and go ahead and approve the minutes. And she is saying that it's her understanding that with her agreement to put that in the minutes, we can go ahead and approve.
You're comfortable with that?
Okay.
I think you hold approving them till next time, once you have them changed. You just move
Okay,
on from approval.
you would be more comfortable doing it that way, Mr. Davis?
I'm comfortable either way. I think that's the actual protocol, is that, because there's a change, we get the change and then we'll approve them when we convene next time.
Okay. I am not an expert and I don't know, so let's go ahead and do that. We will defer the minutes until next month. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to comment publicly? We have a relatively small audience, but is there anyone online or anyone who wants to speak? Okay, we're just going to move on then to facilities management. Mr. Sparks is here to lead us through the agenda. Good
Thank you.
morning.
First, I do want to acknowledge my staff here. We have Mr. Rick Griffin, we have Bill Earl, and our newest addition is Chris Allen. So I wanted to welcome him to the county and to the committee. Moving on, so in terms of capital projects, we have a number that are in process. So we have Building C elevator renovation that's in process. We have Building C HVAC improvement system is in process. And we have the health department roof replacement in process. In addition to that, we have two other ones that are not technically capital projects, but there was the ADA sidewalk at the sheriff department that was not in compliance, so that's underway. And we also have the electrical vault at 3rd Street that is also in process as well. Okay. Thank you.
Neither heat nor pandemic gets in the way of our moving forward.
Not at all.
Okay. The next thing on our agenda is a resolution authorizing the emergency purchase for a Pitney Bowes postage machine. And I think the dollar amount on that is around $28,000.
Yes.
Anything you want to tell us about that, except that the first one died?
Yeah, the current one died. It died on June 29th. So we've been kind of outsourcing the mill process right now. The current one is 8 years old. It's come to its end of life. And this was a result of an emergency affidavit. We know we have a big millings coming up this year. So we want to make sure we had a machine that is working properly to make sure we meet the goals of the county in terms of milling.
Don't miss them until they're gone, right?
Yes.
May I have a motion on this? Mr. Frost, second, Mr. Leonard. Any questions or commentary on the Pitney Bowes machine? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, we have to
Roll
do-
call.
Sorry.
Davist,
Davist, yes.
Roz,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Opie,
Opie, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
and Allen.
I will agree. Thank you all. The next item up is contract for Kane County Pest Control Services in the approximate amount of $8,000 a year, $16,200 for 2 years. May I have a motion?
Caius move.
Thank you, Mr. Caius. We do need to keep control of the pests. I saw Mr. Leonard's hand go up. That'll be our second. Any discussion and commentary?
No, it's pretty self-explanatory. We've come to the end of the term of our last contract with our last pest control vendor. So this was bidded out, and we have a new one that came in as the lowest responsible bidder as Chemical Wise Pet Management out of Aurora.
Any questions for Mr. Sparks on pest control? Roll call.
Davist,
Davist, yes.
Roz,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Opie,
Opie, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
and Allen.
Aye. Our next one up is our authorization to award a split contract for King County and Mill Creek electrician services. I'm guessing that we get a better deal if we put both of these out and invite people to bid. May I have a motion? Mr. Frost, Mr. Leonard seconds. Would you lead us through this, Mr. Sparks?
Yeah, so this is for electrical services that the county has always had one. We're putting this back out to bid. And the reason why I decided to try to split this is that our last vendor, because of the COVID virus situation, refused to come in to finish up a few projects. So I wanted a redundancy system in place where I had a backup at least to get someone in to take care of businesses when it's needed.
Okay. Any questions about electrical services? All right, they will call the roll. Gabriella?
Davist,
Davist, yes.
Roz,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Opie,
Opie, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
and Allen.
Aye. Thank you.
Passes.
Okay, next up is our resolution for the IT department to be able to charge back for the services it renders to special revenue funds, outside agencies, and separate taxing bodies. Mr. Fonstock, do you want to?
Yeah. So again, we're still working on some of the formulas and the calculation of some of these things. And I think due to the coronavirus work and all of the meetings, we have not had a chance to follow through and determine exactly how many different options or proposals we want to present, and then kind of finalize what that would look like as a recommendation. So we would ask to postpone this or table this for 30 days.
Just move it on to next
To
month
next
and we'll
agenda,
just keep
yes.
monitoring
We're
it as we
just-
go?
We're not in a position to make that final recommendation.
Okay, that's.
Caius, move the table.
All right, Mr. Caius moves to table. Is there a second? Mr. Leonard? Good, roll call.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Copey,
Opie, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
and Allen.
Aye. Okay, we will move on to the Mill Creek resolutions. And if we're going to talk about holiday lights, we know that the calendar year moves forward because it's 90 degrees and we should talk about holiday lights. Okay, the first resolution has to do with holiday lights and decor. Do I have a motion? Mr. Frost, thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Leonard, thank you. Mr. Sparks, do you want to talk about holiday lights?
Again, this is for holiday lights and decor for Mill Creek. We came to the end of the term of our previous vendor, and this service was bidded out. And the B&B Holiday Decorating LLC was the lowest responsible bidder.
Okay. Looks like about $12,000 a year, and it's a 2-year contract. And the Mr. Frost, the board has already gone through this and approved it.
Yes, I'd also like to mention that all three of these resolutions come from the Mill Creek SSA local tax for the local resident.
All right. Okay. Does anyone have any comments on Mill Creek choosing to use this vendor for holiday lights and decorations? Let's do a roll call.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Copey, Copey,
Opie, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
and Allen.
Aye. The second one has to do with natural area monitoring at Mill Creek. Again, a 2-year contract, about 12.5. Mr. Sparks, anything special about that?
Nothing special. This is something new for nature area monitoring to have a resource to help develop a plan to move forward for handling things like prairie burns, herbicides, and developing a plan to handle the nature growth and things like that. So Apply Ecological Services was the lowest responsible bidder. This did go through a subcommittee process within SSA, and this was the bidder that was selected.
The big selling point for Mill Creek was all that open area and all of the prairie plantings and the bike paths and so on. So it makes sense. Do I have a motion, Mr. Frost? Second, Mr. Leonard? Okay. Any questions on this? We'll go to a roll call.
Davis,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Copey,
Opie, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Allen.
Aye. And our last Mill Creek this morning is for new trees and stump removal. Again, a 2-year contract, about $15,000 a year. Anything special, Mr. Sparks?
This is, again, for parkway trees and stump removal. It's something that we've always done, and this is a new vendor that we wanted to move forward with.
They switch the trees around. The vendor gives different kinds of trees. And
Their suggestions. I don't know if, Bill, you want to speak to how we select the trees? Tree removal.
This is for tree removal and stump removal. It has nothing to do with new trees.
Right.
Oh, okay. In the specs, it looked like they were talking about trees that were 8 inches tall at breast height and so on. And
That's diameter.
That's the diameter.
That's the diameter of the tree. The trees to be removed, depending upon the size, is a different price.
Ah,
And the actual, this says the appropriate amount is 30,000. It's 30,000 per year.
okay. All right, motion, Mr. Frost? Second, Mr. Leonard? Any comments on the tree removal bid? Would you call the roll?
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Roz,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Opie,
Opie, yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Allen.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed.
Okay, we don't have vehicles
No
this
vehicles.
month. Under the construction item,
Can I give a
we
update?
have,
Okay.
Drew,
I-
you
I-
want to report, Mr. Sparks?
Rick's got some photos.
Yeah, if Mark can bring up some slides.
An exciting week at the building site.
Yes. So as soon as we get that, oh, there you go. On the slides, you can see, if you want to, oh, thank you. I'll do this, right? Do I go this way? All right. So again, this is the illustration of what the multi-use facility is going to look like. Again, this is where it's going to be positioned and located. And this is right here. As of last Thursday, this is what it looks like. You just basically had an open field. You had the pad out there. And this is another picture of what it looks like as of last Thursday. And this is what happened as of Monday. So as you can see, the precast walls are going up. These guys are moving pretty fast. I'm very impressed. I don't know how Drew feels about it at the rate that these guys are putting these walls up and how quickly it's going.
Look at the size of that crane.
That was the little one, actually.
Here again, you can see a partial side of the building is already up. Okay, so I don't know if you want to add it to that, Drew.
Yeah, they're moving along. I've never seen a precast crew set so many panels in a day because I was just there, and after 2 days and a couple hours of work, the entire north facade's up and the east facade, and at the rate they're going, I would think maybe early next week all the walls will be up. So the next step is the roof trusses, and the entire site is, I would say probably 90% the site work complete, underground utilities. That first picture Ricky sent, you kind of looks like they just smoothed out a spot, but you got to realize that there's soil issues there that had to be remediated. There's underground sewers that are 24 feet deep, water main, sanitary sewer, driveways, so there's a lot went on to get to that point. But as of Monday morning, we're above ground going up. So moving along, it couldn't be going better than it is right now, both with the weather. I couldn't be happier with the site contractor or the general contractor, RC Wegman, and no complaints.
Okay.
And the construction team's been dealing with the usual day-to-day or week-to-week issues that come up, and we've made some corrections and adjustments and moving right along.
So the pictures that we saw with the land all smoothed out, that was the utilities already in?
Right.
And all the soil modification that needed to be done?
Yeah, and
was-
that's complete now since the foundation's in, that was the last step. And so we had a budget of, I don't know exactly, but roughly 200 and some $1,000. And we're just under that with all of it complete.
And then we're going to have that structure painted once it's up and done. Is that how the other prefab buildings were done also? The reason that I ask is that when I've looked at them, They looked so good that it looked like, the paint had been manufactured in as opposed to being applied afterwards.
Yeah, it is applied afterwards, and actually, the plan is to set up a little demonstration wall to test out some of the colors.
Okay.
And so we'll try and get everybody involved in that. But the goal is to try and match the existing two buildings over there with the color scheme.
Okay, good. Any comment from folks online?
Madam Chairman?
Mr. Takayas?
Yes, just a question to Drew. Does that include the modifications to some of the doors for the height for especially high vehicles?
Yeah, there was a discrepancy between what I guess between the architect and the sheriff's office on the height of the doors, 12 foot versus 14 foot. So we were able to catch it somewhat in time. The panels are manufactured at a facility off-site, of course, and so we were able to catch it, and they cut the doors 2 foot higher, and then we changed the order for the actual doors themselves to add that 2 feet of height to all the overhead doors for the sheriff's office, and then one bay in the maintenance building, so they could accommodate the bigger equipment.
Great, thanks.
Sounds good. Any other questions?
Madam Chairman, I do have a presentation actually for you from the general contractor. The construction team was given hard hats that are personalized, and they made one for you. So RC Wegman's team put together these, but of course, for someone that's known as the hat lady, we had to modify it a little bit.
And is the upgrades, is this your country?
Yeah, that's my wife's contribution.
Somebody take pictures, please.
You also get a construction vest to wear, an orange vest. So we'll expect you to wear that.
Charming. For those who can't see, there's a dynamite white hard hat. Oh, absolutely. Here, better than that. I'd put it on, for heaven's sake. This?
Sure. All right.
Oh, thank you. Did the Wegman Company have any reason to think that they needed to curry favor? I mean,
No, they gave everybody on the team hard hats out there at the site. So trying to encourage safety.
But yours has a special design on it. So
this is just.
Ricky's has blue flowers, but yours.
Oh no, it matches the W's. So perfect, just charming. Okay.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, really? Well, I am truly honored and flattered, and thank you for the extra time and trouble. It's just unexpected and charming. Okay, the next item to move on is the discussion on the Fabian property. Roger, was anyone able to load? Yes? I tried to get us started on, well, let's see, let's back up a little bit. The committee last month asked that we move forward with a resolution and a listing agreement with a realtor to go to the board so that we can involve them in the conversation about the Fabian property. Seeing as how we are well underway with our new facility and will be moving many of the uses that are at Fabian into the new building, then we should decide what we're going to do next. There was conversation with our purchasing department and with Mr. Sparks, who did purchasing for Northern Illinois, that there was some cart before horse in trying to get a listing realtor before the board had decided to sell the property. I ran that past our state's attorney's office also, who said, and I'll try to quote fairly, Mr. Lovis, that we can add a realtor at any time, it doesn't matter what we've decided, but that it would be difficult to tell that realtor what to do if the board had not made a decision to sell, or if there were going to be any restrictions, or what they would actually be trying to market. So I went to Mr. Martin and I said, is the real concern here that we try and get this in front of the whole board, because it's not reasonable for a committee of 7 to make such a large decision? And so that's kind of what's in the air. And I thought what I would do is, I've got some paper copies of a starting point. I haven't stapled them together. Let me start passing. Let Gabrielle do this, she would do it better. Good, Mark, and you might want one, and good, Mr. Leonard and Mr. Frost. And my goal here, I've got more copies. My goal here was that we would have paper to write on, and I would have paper to write on, so that as you make suggestions, I can kind of keep track. Anybody else need any? Okay.
Chair, is this the same as the document we're displaying?
Should be.
Okay,
I
so
mean, I
they're
just-
seeing that at home then, okay, or wherever.
Right, okay, good. Mr. Davis, can you see it? Mr. Caius, Mr. Copey?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The
good.
reasons to sell, hold, and additional considerations.
Exactly, yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
have it.
I started with the reasons to sell. County or the Forest Preserve has made any plans for the property, they just moved to the judicial center. So it's sitting there. Oh, thank you. So it's sitting there empty. Second, Geneva would like that property back on the tax rolls. And the third item was the county could receive some amount of money, I guessed 3 to 5 million for the property. We will have either expenses for cleaning up the rubble, cleaning up the lead, taking down structures, or we would work that out with a seller. Mr. Frost had mentioned in the past that a seller might want to, instead of buying a construction trailer, might want to consider using the building maintenance building instead. I'll move on to reasons to hold on to the property. That the government should never sell property it owns unless it is certain it has no use for the property in the future. I gave the example that we sold the 6th Street School because we had a good buyer and we were done. Nobody wanted to fix that building. Once the property ceases to be public property, it will probably never be public property there again. This particular 40 acres is uncommonly well placed in the approximate center of county business, and it would be difficult and expensive to replace the property in a similar central location if we needed to do so. So those are just starting places for why we would sell or why we would not sell. And then additional considerations are things that are tossed into the mix. The communications tower is sited on approximately 4 acres. About 4 acres, and would need to be moved to another site. So we would have to have a place for it to go before we take it down. And Roger, am I correct that we need to give those folks 2 years of notice, maximum of 2 years notice?
Yes, the requirement for that lease is that we provide them with 2 years' notice to vacate.
Okay, should probably add that in. Also, the recycling center is currently sited on approximately 10 acres of the property, and it would be, need to be moved also. And I wanted to toss in that if we end up selling that property, I would like us to say to the seller that that forest area should be protected. You think of the recycling center on that little piece that sticks out. I should probably have a map here. The 40 acres is approximately a 30-acre square with a 10-acre appendage. And the 10 acres has the recycling site on it. And you would look at that and you'd say, well, that's not nearly 10 acres, and that's correct. It's actually a 10-acre parcel. It's just that the west side of it and the north side of it is filled up with trees from the Fabian Forest Preserve. And I would like to see that protected if we sell. Also, the Amasa Smith home is there, and that would certainly be something for any buyer to be thinking about. I've had board members say that one of the things they would like to see there is that could the property be leased? Could we earn some money from having other functions on there? And one board member said that he would like to see the property offered up to somebody like universities, colleges, that if we gave them a 100-year lease, they would conceivably build an adjunct campus on the property. And if that happened, the property would continue to have some public feeling to it, presumably with streetlights and sidewalks. And if the public wandered onto the property from the forest preserve or the golf course or the cross country, that there wouldn't be any fences to keep them out or any signs telling them to go away. And then another interesting thing, and we talk about this a whole lot, is board members have said to me that some board members have said that they would be perfectly willing to sell the property, but they would like to have something to say about what happens there. And there might be a way that we could actually do that if we list the property subject to offer. As I understand it, if somebody said, I will give you this much for the property, here's what I want to do, and we thought it was a good plan, we could bring in Geneva and see if Geneva also thought it was a good plan, so they would want to move forward on it. And with all of that, we would still have some control about saying, yes, we agree that that would be a good use of the property and we could sell to that buyer. If somebody said, well, I'll give you $100 million, but I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do, we could just say no. And then, of course, there'd be all the area in between. So if we were to make this as a presentation to the full board, I would think it would be done at a committee of the whole. You're certainly welcome to talk about having this discussion at a full board meeting, but I would think that could be a disaster pretty easily because you know you're going to have 24 opinions. So as is our usual plan, we could present the information at a cow. We could ask for people's input. We could ask them for direction. I would envision it coming back to this committee where we would prepare a resolution to sell if that's what the board wanted to do. And we would, if there were any restrictions on how to do it, or if we wanted to do it as a subject to offer situation, if there was anything more that needed to be accumulated, I think we already have some title work done on the property. I think we already have, I don't know,
we had an, this is Roger, we had an Alta survey done and we had the title search done. So,
okay.
and I believe they did phase 1 for the environmental.
Yes.
Okay. Which said that there's rubble and
There's
some,
things that need to be further investigated. That's all that.
and it would, so then it would come back to this committee, we would draft the resolution, we would get the realtor chosen at that point, and then we would go to the full board to vote on it, having an idea that this is what the what the board wants to do. Okay, let's talk about it. If you have alternate plans, it's fine. I just thought this would give us a starting.
Well, when you, if I may, sell property,
Can you use your microphone or just get a
thought I
little closer
was.
to it?
when you sell property, you make the decision that you're going to sell it. And you might have a 4-bedroom home, to use an example that we can all relate to. And you'd love to have the perfect family come in with the, 2 wonderful kids and move into your house. But ultimately what you do is look at that house, you talk with the realtor, find out what the listing price should be, and you sell it and you move on. When we look at this property and say that if it's anything, it's an asset. It's an asset to the county. I don't want to be dismissive of it, but we have now a 40-acre vacant piece on Route 38 that is contemplated for a future expansion. We, the concept of the recycling facility is on about a 100 square yard piece that we can find a place for in the county. What I'm concerned about is there won't be another committee of the whole meeting available until the end of the year, because the committee of the whole meetings are absorbed by budget discussions. When we go in there, I would like to ask you what people are going to say. They're going to say, well, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that. I think that our obligation as a committee is to carry this forward with a recommendation. Then can be discussed and it can be rejected or accepted. But to throw it open to the board and say, what do you think we ought to do? Doesn't meet our responsibility. I think we as a committee should discuss it and be prepared to make a recommendation that we can support, just like we do everything else in the county. It's our task. That's what we're assigned to do. And I hear a lot of discussion. I shouldn't say I hear a lot of discussion. I see these points and, this property is going to be vacant within a year. This then becomes a piece of property with buildings that need to be demolished. And it's nothing more than that, except for the fact that we own it. Now, if people don't want to sell it, then that's the vote. Then the vote would be that we're not going to sell it. But if we're going to sell it, we can't say to the buyer, well, we'd like to work with you and put the plan together. Okay, that's the buyer is going to put the plan together, and it's the buyer that's going to go to the city of Geneva and say, will you approve this? Okay, we don't work with the buyer to do it. And if we have a buyer that, to my home example, that isn't the perfect family that we want, how are we going to have a realtor that is going to list the property, bring us in a contract, and then we're going to go through the committee system that'll take 90 days and have the board decide if they like this particular buyer and this particular use. It's not practical. It won't ever happen. We will never sell the property if we involve the board in the approval process in pre-approving the buyer. It'll never happen. So what we need to decide, to me, is much more black and white. Do we want to maintain this as a county asset, or do we want to sell it? And if we want to sell it, it becomes an asset that we're going to sell. All of these things about cleanup and the tower and all this other kind of stuff, they all fall by the wayside. We have to give a 2-year notice on the tower, then we give a 2-year notice on the tower. If we have to find a place for the recycling, we find a place for the recycling. These other issues really mean in a practical sense that we won't sell it. If we're going to say that the board needs to be involved in the zoning process, the board needs to have unique approval of the buyer to know that it's somebody that we like. And to your point, if they offered $100 million and wouldn't tell us what it was going to be, I'd say take the deal. It's $100 million for a piece of property that's worth 6. We're not, this isn't going to be a slum. This isn't going to be a use that's not otherwise economically attractive. This is going to be subject to a municipality's zoning approval process. And it's going to be scrutinized. It's going to be something that is deemed to make sense when it happens. I think that adding all these other factors adds a complexity, which in effect means that we will never get to a listing agreement and never get it sold. That's my opinion.
Just to clarify, your feeling is that if the whole board were brought into whether we sell or whether we don't, that the board would choose not to sell at this time?
No, I'm saying that we need to make a we need as a committee to make a recommendation to the board that the board can vote on, up or down. That's our task as a committee.
Okay. I'm just going to mention that when we had a $15 million insurance question, that we did massive input with the board to say, here are our choices and how shall we go forward. And I think this year was interrupted a little bit with the pandemic, but we have never not had huge discussions about big expenditures or big projects.
I'm not suggesting that the board shouldn't be involved after we've made a recommendation, okay? If there's going to be a committee of the whole meeting to discuss it so people can find out why we voted as we did and make their decision. But I believe we are tasked with moving this forward, and that really is
Okay.
my.
Well, we did that once before, and it was a tie vote with one member missing. I guess we could do that drill again. Is it okay if I move on to other conversation? Mr. Frost, did you have your hand up?
I was adjusting my glasses, but I'll put it up. The committee process, as Mr. Martin points out, is that, this committee oversees the buildings and grounds for the county and makes recommendations that flow upstream to the full board at two other occasions for debate and input. And at the last meeting, the committee gave clear direction on the way we wanted to go. If we do need some additional input from the state's attorney's office, I'm sure that would be welcome. I'm a little concerned that if we do decide to sell, that we're, especially now with the virus, we lost a good chunk of a real hot market for this type of property last spring and this summer. And as we've mentioned before, the DuPage Tech Center just to the east sold out in rapid succession over the last couple of years. So we'd certainly like to take advantage of that. Mr. Martin and I, on behalf of the county, attended a meeting at the city of Geneva with the mayor and their planning department. Geneva is landlocked. They don't have a lot of options for new development. And this 40-acre piece is going to be, I'm sure, given a lot of scrutiny. It is in the city limits. And as Mr. Martin said, it's subject to, if somebody comes in with a proposal, they're going to have to go to the city and present it. And we could certainly couch our dealings with a buyer to say that we have the right of refusal to any buyer. And we can look in a broad sense at their proposals. And if it's something that is distasteful to us, we could reject it. But I think we gave clear direction last time, and I think the process is clear that we make a recommendation and move it up the ladder.
Mr. Foster?
Yeah, just for one point, we did get 3 different brokers to assess value on that property, and they did some homework for us. And there were, a range of dollar figures associated with the parcels. And then there was also a recommendation from at least one of them about the subject to offer. And I think that they were leaving that room in there for the subject to offer in case there was an opportunity to work with a buyer at a certain price that would make their business plan work So they were like, if you do subject to offer, you might sell it at a lesser amount if you thought the business idea was going to attract jobs or is going to attract more retail sales tax, or it was something that was appealing to the city. But by doing the subject to offer, that was kind of the broker's advice, that you would get their pitch for purchasing the property and why it would benefit the community, as opposed to setting just a hard dollar figure. That was one of the recommendations. I just thought I'd mention that.
Anyone on the phone? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Mr. Davis, I just got a note, and would you like to address us now?
I was being electronically compliant by hitting the little raise your hand, icon on my screen. If Mr. Martin hadn't already retired, I'd be looking to hire him because he presented my thoughts very eloquently. I concur with John and Andrew. In no way is this intended to, circumvent or bypass the full board. Even on very large, issues and projects, as you were talking about them, we invite people to participate in our committee meetings all the time. But ultimately, we need to make a recommendation so that it moves forward and then has discussion. If you don't narrow the focus, it really, the herding cats, I think, was mentioned. So this is our responsibility to, narrow the focus, make a recommendation, and let it then move logically through the committee process, and ultimately will be the full board who decides. But I think we've had a pretty clear message that it's time to do this and move forward.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Copey, go right ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. What we're speaking of is a single option, an ultimatum, essentially. And maybe this is just my point of view, but I believe that you should give all the options the opportunity. The cement is even dry over there at the multi-use facility. We're not moved out. It'll be several years before we move out. And yeah, I get it. We can make time if we start now, blah blah. But the thing is the main instigation of this entire idea to sell comes from one entity, and Mr. Martin made a political promise to pursue that concept, and I get it. But it's not fair to all of the other ideas and concepts at all, and you are excluding an entire realm of ideas, and yes, maybe perhaps from every board member might have a plan or an idea or a consideration, and you know what? It is our duty to let them have that consideration. So to say, oh yeah, let's get a real estate agent and give them the option to sell, which is the main objective according to this argument. It narrows down. It does narrow down the scope, and I don't think it narrows it down fairly. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say that initially when we were talking about selling this property or potentially selling this property, I was against selling it, using that money to buy or to help fund the new multi-purpose facility building. Since that has now been secured, I'm in the position I was before. I'm very neutral on it. However, I think what we need to do before we can really take much action is find out specifically what it might be worth. I mean, I think, for us to go to the board and say, we're thinking of selling, and they go, well, what are you going to get for it? We don't know. I think we need to get some evaluations on the property so that we have an idea of what it's worth, and then we can weigh the pluses and the minuses of selling or not. I think the other thing too is in the committee process, I think it's very important that we move forward something to give the board the option to consider. Not to say we have to sell or we don't have to sell, but here's what the property is worth. Here are the pluses and minuses, and then let the board decide. But I do think until we get some figures from some commercial real estate firms of a range of what it's worth, it's very hard to evaluate whether or not we should sell or not sell. That's kind of the crux of the matter. Who buys it is irrelevant, because quite honestly, I think the city of Geneva has much more say in who would be able to buy it than we do. And if we're willing to sell it, our concern is that, we get the best possible dollar for it that we can, and that there are restrictions or some limits in there so that it won't be an amusement park or whatever. But that really is Geneva's decision to make, since it is in the city limits of Geneva. So my thought is, at the last meeting, I had hoped that what we were going to do is get some ideas of cost of what we could sell the land for. We need that. And I think once we have that, I think it's our responsibility as a committee to move this forward for consideration. We're not saying that we as a committee want to sell it or not sell it. We're saying we want the board as a whole to consider whether or not the board as a whole wants to sell it or not. But if we don't have the proper information for the board to review and consider, I think we're wasting everybody's time.
Okay. We did get a range of prices last time, and I can certainly get those copied and sent out to you. I think that the company that said if we offered it for sale, I'm sorry, the language is subject to offer, that they were saying, well, I'll get the numbers, but I think it was that 3 to 5 was not too far off. Maybe, Drew, do you remember, did it get up towards 7?
Yeah, I mean, we were guessing for quite a while, and when they did come back, the 5 seemed to be the kind of median range. Maybe it was a little optimistic, but the market's changed a little bit, of course, with the virus situation. And I would say that I agree with Mr. Leonard and Mr. Martin that we want to move forward on this, and if we could have staff talk to several commercial brokers and at least get like a RFQ type of situation with the advice of the state's attorneys. I'm not sure, Ricky, if that would make sense to you, but and Mr. Lulz is here also, if we could just agree to move forward to get some proposals and have them tell us, yeah, we think it's worth about this much, and this is how we would market it. And, here's our rate we charge for our services.
Okay, let me ask you this. If you have some realtor who says, I would list it at 6 million, let's make it a higher. I would list it at 7 million and see what happens. And you have some other realtor who does, I think you're going to get your best bet if you offer it, if you make it subject to offer. How would you choose between those different techniques?
Well,
or would you have them come in here and interview and pick one?
I would ask staff to review them and bring them in here and tell us the pros and cons of each proposal.
Okay.
And then we could make a recommendation.
Okay. Mr. Martin, go right ahead.
During the years that I practiced, there was a reality in my mind that you deal in this context with a competent realtor, somebody that has a good a good professional background, perhaps somebody with a national background if you want to broaden their approach, or somebody that's local that really knows the local market, whatever it is. But a competent realtor is not going to say, let's take a stab at it. A competent realtor isn't going to want to waste their time asking for a price that it's not going to get. If they came in and said they wanted to list it at $6 million, that means that they're willing to devote their effort, their advertising expense, and their credentials to try to sell it, and they're not going to want to waste their time. If they came in and they thought it was worth 7, and we said, well, let's take a shot at 10, we wouldn't find a broker with any competence that would want to represent us. So I think there's a lot of like inchoate regulation of what the price is going to be based upon whether or not we hire a competent real estate firm, which we intend to do. I don't.
Deb, so just for reference, when we asked 3 brokers for their proposal of what they thought the value was, we were asking them just for a quick, what is the valuation of this property for potentially selling it. The way we sourced the brokers was to go through Geneva's development department, and that was the meeting that we were at. We pulled their brokers that list property within Geneva commercially. So those were the 3 that we got. We could certainly go and ask for a request for qualifications and invite those 3, but also open it up to others that wanted to propose. But that was how we determined who the responsible or most responsive brokers were in Geneva, was getting it from Geneva's development department. So.
Okay. Yeah, Mr.
This is
Martin?
kind of unrelated, but it always it ends up, the condition of the property always ends up being part of the discussion here. One of my concerns with the property in its present state is that we have buildings that we're going to have to demolish. They're all going to be attractive nuisances as soon as in fact, I think the only thing operating, well, Ricky's department is still storing stuff on the floor. We've got the mechanics out there, but once these are empty, we're going to have to tear these down. And what my secondary concern is that once we don't use this property for a governmental purpose, it's no longer tax exempt. And I don't know that the Geneva Township assessor is going to run over and say, I want to tax this at its fair market value. But the only governmental body in the state that is tax exempt because of on an ownership basis is the state itself. If you're a forest preserve or a park district or a school district or whatever else, you pay real estate taxes on that based upon its fair market value, unless you're using it for your governmental purpose. And a good example would be the forest preserve, which pays real estate taxes on every bit of the property that it farms. Okay, because it's not using it for a forest preserve purpose, and so it is taxable. We'd have to convert this property to some kind of an agricultural use to have the taxes be moderate. And if it's worth, well, pick a low number. If it's worth $3 million, and we have to pay real estate taxes at approximately 3% of the value of the property. What is that? Help me with my decimals. Is that
90,000 a year.
90,000 a year. So that property, to have it exist in our stable of assets, in and of itself could cost us 90 grand or more a year just to hold it. Which is why one of the reasons I want to move it ahead is because we not only we have to be, and I've used this term before, and it's kind of a corny term, but we have to be stewards here. We not only have to we have the public's assets, which we have to manage in a responsible manner. And in this context, we're talking about an assets that has a commercial, a business aspect to it. And at least in one person's thought, being a good steward of that means we need to treat it like the piece of commercial property that it is. And deal with it and decide what we're going to do. But if we don't have a purpose for it, inventorying it with no purpose intended, in my mind, is not a good stewardship. But I'm concerned about not moving it ahead, in part because it becomes an odd asset if we're not using it for anything, and we can't farm it.
Okay, well, I can't help but respond to that in saying that if we made $5 million on it after expenses of cleanup and so on, that would be 1/3 of our insurance bill for 1 year. And as a steward of that property, I'm not sure that putting that price tag on that particular 40 acres of what has been public land and is completely surrounded by public land, my idea of stewardship might be different from yours.
Well, that's why we have to vote. I'm not suggesting
Sure.
there's not different opinions, and I made clear that that was my opinion when I said it.
Sure.
But
That's what a discussion is all about. Good. Okay, well, do you want to do the, shall we do the homework of,
Madam Chairman?
Mr. Caius, yes.
Thank you. Boy, this is a tough decision. I agree with everybody, at least partly. I agree with Bill in that I'm neither way, one way or the other, for selling or keeping. Maybe leaning a little bit more to keeping the land, but certainly we have reasonable arguments on both sides. First, can we accept the three assessments of value for the property already as valid right now, without having to go back to staff and ask them to produce somewhat additional?
Mr. Frost?
Mr. Caius, this is Drew. My opinion is, especially with the way things have changed so much for everything in the last few months, those opinions are at least a year old. I would say that the best course of action would be before next month's meeting of this committee that staff seek some additional RFQs or whatever however you want to couch it, from commercial brokers on what's the rough value in their opinion of the property, and background on their firm, and how they would go about marketing it and what they see as potential uses for it. And then this committee could look at those and possibly make a recommendation at next month's meeting to move one forward for consideration by the board. And at that time, the entire board will get to, decide on the sell or keep issue as this moves forward. And all these items all these points can be taken up at that time.
Thank you. And I guess that's my second point, is that, as we know, even when we present something at committee, it has to go through at least two other committees or more, and can be dissected and modified at any time along that route, including the final one at the board meeting. So what we present is not a hard and fast, once we move it along, which I am in favor of doing, moving along whatever way we can as expeditiously as possible to get some ideas and to make a decision on what to do with the property. So that's my second point. My third point, and I think final one, was what would it take to get a resolution on? Do we have to move to have a resolution right now? Can we ask Mr. Lulvis what's the best procedure to get this on as a presentable item that can be voted on at the next board meeting or the one following?
So I think the answer would be to put a resolution on the agenda for next month with the details to be filled in accordingly, 3 days before the meeting. But that way we could have an actionable item as we move forward. And again, as this moves forward, the question really could satisfy everybody. Here's some opinions of value and possible ideas on uses, or at least who we would market it to. And by the way, should we sell the property or not? That we can have that discussion as it moves forward. But we need to get those proposals over the next 30 days.
So, but in this meeting, can I move to have a resolution presented at the next meeting, and we vote on, and we get a certain percentage, and we would have a resolution regardless of what the numbers were we got from the
well, the
businesses?
challenge is this is shown as discussion, so I don't know that we could vote on it. But we could do as we did last month and have consensus.
I understand Mr. Lolis is there. Can we move to have it presented as a resolution for the next meeting?
Oh, can I get one word in before Joe says something? My
Sure.
only concern is the time frame and the turnaround that you guys are talking about. I think the quickest and easiest way is to go back to the three vendors and have them refresh their numbers considering the pandemic issue. If we do it RFP, I think it's going to take a lot longer time to get all of that information back. I'll let Teresa speak to that if she disagrees, that it would take a significantly longer time to put an RFP together and kick it out to the streets.
No, that would take a lot long. That would take a lot longer because then all of the brokers would want to go out. We have to publicly put a legal notice, and then all the brokers would want to go out and visit the site, which means staff would have to go out there and on multiple days to take people around to show them the land and give them access. So I think I agree with Ricky's point that go back to the three brokers that they originally got quotes from and have them refresh their numbers.
Can we hear from Mr. Lovis then on the procedure if we use those?
Good morning, Mr. Lovis. Thank you for coming. And would you care to try and respond to Mr. Caius's question?
Sorry, I can't hear.
Today, you don't have an action item on your agenda to vote. I would suggest that Mr. Frost's suggestion to reach a consensus and have an agreement to have the action item placed on the next committee meeting agenda, and you can fill in the details 3 or 4 days ahead of time for the chairman to confirm to put it on there. But you really should not be voting on anything today because this was just a discussion item that was listed.
Okay, but I am looking for direction. You want to see a resolution next time to sell the property based on the recommendations that would come from the three realtors that we talked with before. Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think what we're looking for is an action item for our next meeting to consider selling, not to sell or not to not sell, but the option to consider selling that would give us updated evaluations, as Mr. Frost had said, so that we as a committee have a better idea of what the property is worth, and then we can move it forward to the next committee, whether it be executive or finance, and then on to the county board. But I think what I would like to see done today, if we could, is that we get confirmation from Ricky and any of the staff that might be involved, that if we go back to the original three organizations that gave us quotes, that they can have those figures together, and then the state's attorney's office can work up a resolution for us to vote on at the next meeting with your agreement.
Okay. Well, that sounds to me like a resolution to sell, depending on how the quotes come in.
And, the resolution to sell is what it would be, But once again, we're just moving it forward for consideration at the next committee meetings and then to the board if it gets through those. So, it's a multi-step approach, but I think it's something that is worth us moving on and seeing whether or not the executive or finance or even the board as a whole wants to consider selling. The other thing we have to remember too, when you list a property, that doesn't mean that you're mandated to sell that property. There are always ways that you can decide not to sell the property. So I think it's just a matter of taking a look at the situation and finding out what the property's worth and then deciding to move it forward to the other committees. And I think that's very prudent on our part as a committee.
Okay,
So with your approval, that's what I would like to see.
sure. We can certainly do that. I'm here to serve the committee. I will say, though, that if you list the property for $6 million and someone comes in with a contract to buy it $6 million, you're going to be hard pressed to say no. That's what John was saying.
But we wouldn't
offer
list-
your house for sale. You don't have a choice of who's going to, of which offer you're going to accept, assuming that the price is met and that they have financing.
And all the conditions are met.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, so I see in the room that I think Mr. Martin, Mr. Froz, Mr. Leonard want to go forward like that on the phone?
Could you restate what we can expect to see then at the next meeting and the following meeting?
At the next meeting, we will have information we will do our best to have information from the 3 brokers that we talked to before, who were recommended by Geneva's Development Department. And we will ask them to update what they did before, and we will bring in a resolution to, if those are acceptable parameters, we will have a resolution then to move forward on selling the property.
And that would be at the following meeting, that would be at the September meeting?
August.
Well, the next meeting is August,
Right.
and we will have them back. And so then, I'm just trying to be clear on this. We will see at the next meeting the 3 updated proposals, and then we will then expect to see that we will accept those proposals or one of those proposals, and then we'll see a resolution on the following meeting, which will be September meeting. Is that correct? So this is July.
No, the August meeting.
I believe that.
Are we going to go forward with the recommendation at the August meeting?
I'm having trouble with the microphone, but Mr. Barton, you're saying that you expect the resolution at the August meeting.
That's what we said, well, Mr. Leonard should say it. He proposed it. I don't want to speak for him.
Yes, I would just like, Madam Chairman, to have this resolution to possibly sell the property at our next meeting with the updated evaluations from 3 people that did that before, as Teresa mentioned and Mr. Sparks mentioned. Those should be easy enough to get, shouldn't be a problem, so that we can have a resolution to vote on to move it forward at the August meeting with your approval.
Davis raising his hand.
I'm sorry, Mr. Caius, is that clear?
I think so. And Ricky said that we would probably not have a problem getting the update, or Teresa said we'd have no problem getting the updated figures for the next meeting, just not the full RFPs.
Yes, I think we would get that information a lot quicker than if we went through.
So we expect to have those figures next month, and then also a resolution to go ahead and pass to move on to other committees. That's the way I understand it, and that's correct, yes?
Yes. How you're going to let's see, the August cow will still be doing budgets. So I'm not sure how to do a presentation to the full board. Maybe we'll end up having this discussion on the board floor. I don't know. I'll ask for input from the rest of the committee on how to handle the logistics of that. Mr. Davis, I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you ready?
No,
to
that's
speak?
fine. I think that Mr. Leonard is correct that, having a resolution ready for the next meeting in August is the appropriate method. And just want to remind anyone that's listening that there's no need to be too nervous about having a resolution that says basically, to sell. You are many meetings and many votes away from that actually happening, but that's what this looks like as it moves forward. And as to the logistics, again, let it follow the natural course that we have in place with the committee structure. And it will make its way through and more people will be exposed to it at each level. And of course, everyone's invited to participate in any standing committee or executive or the full board. So it's not hidden from anyone as we go through this. And yes, the resolution will say to sell because that's what it looks like as you move it through this process. But it can be voted up or down, it can be amended, all those things are available. So no need for too much hand wringing, I think, as we do this.
Well, to clarify, if admin in August chooses to move this forward, it could, I guess it could go to finance because it involves money. Then it would be,
yes,
it would be the September executive meeting, and it would be the September full board meeting. And,
potentially.
And what I was just saying was that maybe it's just I got it fixed in my head that we would have the opportunity for the cow, but that opportunity would not be in August unless you want to add another meeting. Is that the direction that the committee wants to go? Or maybe we could talk about that in August, and I could ask the chairman to weigh in about scheduling an extra cow meeting to discuss this before September exec and September full board. Okay, that sounds like a plan. Any more comment, discussion? If we do end up, well, at some point we will present to the full board at a cow or at a full board meeting. If you guys would be willing to take a look at the guidelines, the rough draft, and give me any extra input that you would like the board to see, that would be helpful. I was trying to be, just try and include everything I could think of. And it would be helpful to have everything you can think of. Okay. All right. Thank you for good discussion once again. Is there new business? Is there old business? Otherwise, I'm going to ask for a motion to put the reports on file. Mr. Leonard moves.
Caius, second.
Mr. Caius, you second. Is there any discussion? Any discussion on the reports? Let's do a roll call. Kopi?
Kopi, yes.
Davis?
Davis, yes.
Roz?
Yes.
Caius?
Caius, yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Aye. All right. No need for executive session. A movement, excuse me, a motion to adjourn. Mr. Frost moves.
Davis, second.
Mr. Davis seconds. Do we do a roll call on adjournment?
No, you don't have to.
No. Okay. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Any opposed is welcome to stay. Thank you for coming online, gentlemen. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roger, you got the judicial?
Yeah, you want to go?
Yeah.
You gonna drive separate?
Huh?
You want me to ride with you?
I'm jumping.
All the fun stuff we get at.
I gotta shoot over there now.
Okay.
Hey, Roger.
Roger.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks for everything.
Yep. Thank you, guys.